Hello everyone, thank you for joining us at this virtual knowledge exchange conference. I'm delighted to host this session today, and I would also like to thank the team at RC Global for making this happen. Now, before we start, some of us probably think that now there is nothing new under the sun, and some are already tired looking at the time this content would take from you, but I promise to make your time worthwhile. My name is Aslan Patov. I'm an advocate of behavioral science, an author of a CX framework, and the founder of CX consulting company called Renaissance, a Dubai-based customer experience and management consulting firm that focuses on the unconscious and often irrational behaviors and designs around them. I've worked with multiple clients across the globe and in multiple sectors in Europe and in the Middle East, from automotive to banking, fashion and beauty, to retail and real estate to education. While I was transforming multiple brands across the globe, I started noticing things that, to put it in a nice way, challenged the approach that consulting companies are still taking when designing customer experience. To get you some more context, I would need to go 10 years back. From 2011 to 2012, when I was just starting to work for Ogilvy and Mather in London, for one of the activation branches of Ogilvy. As a part of a new philosophy, we had an incredible tool that was helping us research purchase decision journeys, tap into the moments of gravity where marketing activities could have had the biggest possible impact on the decision making. The methodology was staggering and still is: incredible insights and behavioral powerhouse, great structure and approach. And after scrupulous research, strategy development and creative design, clients were improving their performance, but never to an extent that I would have expected. I was questioning myself, and basically over and over again, having the same why in my mind. Is that a research problem? Is that a framework problem? Is that a human problem all along? Even with an incredible tool infused with AI, sophisticated research approach, with all those brilliant strategic and creative minds around, even with all that, we're still not able to get the full picture of the decision-making process and take the full potential of the human decision-making approach. Ironically, as David Ogilvy himself said, the problem with market research is that people don't think what they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say. Those thoughts led me to a new paradigm. And soon after the switch from the brand to the customer side, from marketing to CX, I had started designing a model that can help better understand human beings. Well, especially when it comes to customer experience. An approach that connects the dots and introduces CX to the world of behavioral science, to the world of unconscious experience. But first, let's try to understand what is wrong. Any customer experience design has inputs, and those are mainly coming from the things that we think we know about our customers. The challenge we are facing is simple. Our customers live in a three-dimensional world. Our today's CX is operating in a two-dimensional world. And there we try to bring the two worlds together using a set of switches. Next few minutes, we'll discuss the challenges of the world where we operate, some related to data collection, some to insights generation, and some to approach to customer experience design. Let's start with data. The data collection. We always need a proof. Our clients need a proof of a gap, of a friction point, a reason to believe that the investments will be channeled in the right initiative. And at this point, we start collecting the data to accommodate to that need. But any research, subject to its type, whether it's qual or quant, has pros and cons, and researchers know about them. The most important out of all are the limitations research has. There are three of them. Prescribed responses is one. We always depend on the amount of knowledge, on the wealth of knowledge that the researcher has put into the survey. And if we didn't prescribe the right answers for those questions, then the whole approach is going to be flawed. Customer's action is number two. We are normally biased at the point when the decision is made. So at the point when the action was made, to which we report during the survey, is already a problem. And then customer's memory, biased in the process of recall, we as customers normally try to justify ourselves at that point, at the point when the action was made. What's remembered about a decision is as important as the decision itself, especially in determining how much regret or satisfaction one experiences. And now that individual tells a story or uses prescriptive responses of the survey to justify action, research indicates that the process of making and remembering choices yields memories that tend to be distorted in very predictable ways. Here is an experiment. Mather, Shafir, and Johnson gave subjects a choice between two job candidates, each of which had 4 positive and 4 negative attributes. When later asked to recall the attributes of these, the subjects recalled more positive attributes of their choice and more negative attributes of the candidate they had rejected. This was an experiment that highlighted a choice supportive bias, one of many in behavioral economics and one of a few that shows how our memories can be skewed or flawed. Choice supportive bias says that when we recall a past decision, we distort memories to make the choices we made appear to be the best that could be made. And distortion is just one of the ways we can override what we know, and sometimes we simply forget, or we knowingly justify our choices or add additional points to the reasons behind our choices. Now that we have cleared the data section, the data collection side and issues that arise during the survey phase, let's look at the ways we generate insights. While there are multiple ways to run a diagnostic analysis, we all tend to do correlations to understand probabilities of interest in products and experiences, to match profiles to those and design future states of any journeys. Same data is used then to run inferential analysis that would help us draw conclusions and potentially even use an AI and machine learning tool to run predictive analysis. If you go on Reddit and search for random correlations, you'll find an interesting community forum that focuses on correlations between unlike things. And some are extreme, like, for example, a correlation between the cost of labor in the United States that has minus 0.87 correlation to the availability of the cabbage per capita. Another one suggests that there is a strong correlation, almost 100%, between England's reaching the World Cup finals and there being a rectangular patch on the soccer ball. You probably could remember that. It happened, I guess, in 2021 and 1966. Another one suggests that there is a certain correlation between most popular adult movie categories per region in Sweden, which has a strong correlation to the density of radioactive fallout from Chernobyl in 1986. So, as funny as it is, of course, most of these are just coincidences, but how sure can we be that our input in a research and correlations we seek for are not just a bluff and they do not have only one source of influence? I will leave this question with you and move on. The third and final point is about the design, the customer experience design, and what we're leaving out of that process. The way we design requires a revision. There are many ways of journey mapping. Sometimes we do this exercise without ever realizing the full potential of it. Today I would like us to focus on rather major parts of CX journey mapping that in 99.9% of cases we either do wrong or don't do at all. The first module, which is currently done wrong, is emotions. There are multiple ways that humanity looked at emotions so far. Some are more progressive than others, but the best of them try to understand the impact of an emotion on the decision-making process, which in the case of customer experience design is all about the impact of the emotion on the context and interaction experience, impact on the way our customers perceive the conversation. Some of you might have heard about the PAD emotional state model. It helps describe and measure emotional states. First developed by Albert Mehrabian and James Russell, it uses 3 numerical dimensions of pleasure, arousal, and dominance that represents all emotions. It tells you to what extent an emotion impacts the arousal, pleasure, or dominance levels. Based on that, we can suggest how the person might be perceiving the world around him, identify the impact behind the familiar emotion. For example, let's say you work as a frontline staff in retail or in hospitality. 2 people approached you, they both want to buy a product or get a service. Although they both did some proper research, for one of them, the product is an expensive purchase, while it's not for another one. One is happy and another one is reserved. Both want the same thing. Do we treat them similarly? First of all, it's quite important to understand the underlying facts behind their emotional state to be able to react. The happy but less affluent customer is less dominant, as it's an expensive purchase, quite excited, which puts him on the plus side when it comes to pleasure, displeasure, and aroused from the same excitement. The other one is not as aroused, much more dominant, he did his research in the end of the day, and has a good amount of pleasure to work with. Besides, the inexpensive purchase doesn't put him in a defensive mode. So what do we do with these 2? The first buyer would find it difficult to listen, focus on the information you want to share. He also did his research, but the confidence is low and the purchase is of a high value, so he's possibly ready to change the opinion. He still is uncomfortable with the purchase, so he requires support, guidance, but in a very simple way, using terms that are easy to grasp and digest. The second one, not so much. Don't stand in the way. He's focused, can get into an argument, and as he is clear in his mind, because it's not clouded with any emotions, he might not share the vibe you might be carrying, the positive vibe. Which doesn't mean he wouldn't appreciate it. Don't play an expert unless it's a respectful and non-undermining experience. That was just one example based on one simple model. Instead of trying to understand the real deal behind those emotions, we often simply map the state, which can sound as positive, negative, or neutral. How often have you seen those smiley faces on a map that you have never used to analyze the journey, but rather state that the experience was good or bad? Almost every other journey map has it, and those who have an indication of the actual emotion end up using those indications for the exact same reason, to state the emotion. The second part of the things that we do wrong is about behavioral biases. We don't consider them at all. In my previous engagements with consultants, I've heard on multiple occasions that the topic is hard to grasp. Some would say that it requires a lot of investments to explore and train it. Some would want to spend on such things nothing at all. But let's remind ourselves once again, what is the end goal of our practice? What are we here to foster? A change or just a statement of a fact? Are we here to avoid the change? For those of you who haven't heard about behavioral economics, irrational decision making, and the tricks our brain plays on us, we have designed the third part of the small keynote. Now, before we start, by no means I wanted to say that we shouldn't be doing research or using classical methods of insights exploration and generation. What I try to highlight is that that is not enough, and that's only a fraction of what can be done. On a daily basis, at any given point of time, our brain processes more than 11 million bits of data. Only 50 of them become conscious thoughts. It's 5/10,000%. All that happens passively. But in an active mode, when we're trying to come up with a decision, the picture is no better. If any of you have read Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, you can rather refer to this terminology of a System 1 and System 2, where System 1 is a fast brain that uses shortcuts to foster decisions. System 2 is a much slower brain that uses rational tools to digest the context, and based on things that we know, it calculates potentially more favored outcomes and helps us choose the next step. While we all think that we are quite rational and can justify every decision ever taken, according to Harvard's Professor Gerald Zaltman, 95% of our purchase decision making takes place in the subconscious mind. People can make sound decisions when outcomes are predictable, situation is static, and there is plenty of feedback that can guide us. Consideration of behavioral science, deep understanding of human state, is what makes a system 3D. And only that system can connect us to the real world of humans. If we consider the rational, add the irrational, and explore the emotions, we're much closer to the truth. Let's check a few examples, starting with paradox of choice. Now, just a few words before I gave an actual example. Look, in the world of behavioral economics, we have already explored a lot. Multiple experiments took place, and most of those experiments are related to marketing, to the way we will convert people. And you'll find a lot of data on all these biases when it comes to marketing and all those activities that impact and nudge behaviors. But we never try to understand how those biases put up a fight to an experience. And we never try to understand how these biases can be used to improve those experiences. And this is what we're trying to do today. Coming back to a paradox of choice, some of you know paradox of choice as analysis paralysis. There are multiple names given to this bias by the community. We have to understand the way choices make. For everyone to understand how decision-making works, I just want to be very clear on the decision-making process. Think about it as a three-staged approach. The pre-choice, before the choice was made, the actual point of making the choice, and the post-choice. When we have multiple options to choose from, we get into trouble. In the beginning, there is an abundance of choice. It's the pre-choice stage. There are too many options. it makes us hard to take a good decision. So there is a certain concern. There is a psychological distress in the process because you're trying to flick through the depth and breadth of different choices that you have to make. Maybe you're buying a car and you're trying to understand what kind of make you want to go for, what kind of type you want to go for. And then once you chose the make and the type, you try to understand all the options you want to include. There are certain choice priorities, there are certain choice risks. Choice is not a one-way road. And at the point when the choice was made, we start thinking about what if we made a different choice? We become suddenly less happier about the choices we make because of the depth. We suddenly get less convinced with the choice that we made. And the opportunity cost after the post-choice is something that we have to face every time. Now, the stress keeps building up as you go through these stages, and the experience isn't getting any greater. Now, if you want to provide a customer to ensure a good customer experience with a multitude of choices, think again, because that might not be necessary. Moreover, it might be completely unnecessary. Another example is the decoy effect. Or the asymmetrical dominance effect, as some professionals call it. It basically states that addition of a third option, the decoy, helps us make the choice faster, less overwhelming. But that's what customer experience tells us. When it comes to marketing, it's going to be used as a conversion tool. Decoys provide an easy rationale while distressing the decision making. They generate ready-made justifications for choices we make. Let's think about examples. Decoys can be used, for example, to reduce anxiety. They can support the decision making by informing and guiding the choice, which in turn will reduce anxiety caused by the complexity of the choice. Or it can just guide the decision-making process. Greater choice complexity hinders decision-making. Decoys can help customers choose better and faster, as well as avoid continuous cycles of valuation and defaulting. In a way, decoy effect can help us overcome the analysis paralysis that I've just been talking about. Another bias that I want to talk about is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less we know, the more confident we are. You've probably been, and every one of you have been in those shoes of a newbie in a company when you just come in post-university, or maybe you just switched after very little experience on your previous job assignment. And as you come in, you're overflowing with confidence. You think you get it all, and then at some point you face a certain challenge, and eventually you see that you're not as experienced, or maybe you're not as smart as you've seen yourself. That is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Due to lack of understanding, self-awareness, or experience, we set poor expectations and get disappointed, lose confidence and motivation. There are multiple ways you can use Dunning-Kruger effect in the education, in learning trainings, for example. But you can also use it with customers. If you understand how it works, you can potentially use it to avoid getting customers disappointed, whether the offered experience is better or just different. You have to inform them on the flow of the experience to make sure that you manage the right expectations. You can use it to avoid conflicts. Customers and employees might want to compensate for their own incompetence and find ways to look better in those situations when they were wrong. Argue, maybe play tricks, or avoid conversations or altogether. You have to act preventively, ensure that there is a smooth transition from the role the newbie came in, and from his profile to a new profile that is much more confident, and confident not only because he doesn't know, but confident because he actually does know. And that transition between the high confidence and lack of knowledge to high confidence, full of knowledge, has to be seamless, whether it's an employee or a customer. One last behavioral bias I would like to talk about is IKEA effect, is when labor leads to love. We inflate the value of things we've made as it's a way to prove ourselves that we're competent and want to feel our effort was worth it. So basically, what the IKEA effect says is that we place higher value on experiences that we help designing. How can you use it with customers? You can collaborate on all products, get customers help on existing products by letting them participate in reviving and remediating them. You can co-create new experiences, design new products together with customers, use permanent customer labs, to engage with them on a regular basis. Or you can probably use IKEA effect to think of product versions ready to create, roll your own, or make your own product categories are getting more and more customers all over the world. I hope these few examples have shed some light on the subject. At Renaissance, we have started designing various products and exploring application of behavioral economics on customer experience use cases. And the more we engage with the subject, the more potential we see in it. The challenge is still there though. It will take time until the world accepts behavioral economics and makes it a part of the routine. And at this point of time, we all have an opportunity to pioneer it. So in a nutshell, where does it all take us? Modern approach to CX is not providing us with a full picture. We focus a lot on the rational thinking, while only 10% of decisions made are being made rationally. What's the impact? We lose 9/10 of the opportunity by offering rationale-based CX design solutions. The way forward is to start exploring the human nature, going beyond customer statements and survey responses, looking into what's not being said, into what I call the unconscious experience. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all during our live Q&A session soon. If you have any questions, you can email me directly at aslan@renaissance.io or ping me on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.